This is Michael Popok, LegalAF. You know what I would like from Sam Alito, Supreme Court Justice? I would like less editorial pieces with the Washington Post, less speeches abroad where he didn't think journalists from America would hear him. I would like less rejection of ethics rules and more ethics. And we have another example now with ProPublica having just published an investigative report, one that Sam Alito tried to get out in front of by publishing first in the Wall Street Journal a denouncement, a renunciation of the ProPublica investigative reporting, but it is pretty compelling. Shout out to the reporters Justin Elliott, Josh Kaplan, Alex Merzeski, who've come up with new evidence that Sam Alito has gotten into bed with Paul Singer. Paul Singer, if you didn't know, is the head founder of Elliott Management. Elliott Management is an activist hedge fund that trades in distressed properties and governments and countries and tries to take advantage of those bankrupt companies. For example, for those that like to read books, Elliott Management owns Barnes & Noble. Paul Singer is also a founder of the Manhattan Institute, a leading right-wing conservative think tank that frequently writes amicus briefs. Those are friends of the court briefs into the Supreme Court to try to influence policy and decision-making by the Supreme Court. For example, Manhattan Institute, supported by Elliott Management's Paul Singer, sent in 15 amicus briefs this year for business before the court, including Sam Alito, this term alone. Multiply that by all the other terms. So what's the problem? The problem is that at least in 2008, Sam Alito took a several $100,000 fishing boondoggle trip to Alaska, paid for by Paul Singer. Paul Singer, who regularly, his company, Elliott Management, owning dozens and dozens and dozens of companies, including Barnes & Noble, is regularly before the court, the Supreme Court, for business. And yet he's hobnobbing, rubbing elbows with Supreme Court justices like Sam Alito. Look, this is the storyline. The storyline is right-wing MAGA donors have unparalleled access to the U.S. Supreme Court's right wing in a way there is no analog or counterpart on the Democratic side. There are Democratic billionaires. They just don't try to curry favor with the Supreme Court justices of which they are politically or ideologically aligned. And those justices, like the three that are on the liberal wing or the Democratic wing, don't do it. Don't violate their ethics, even if it's not technically an ethical violation because there's no ethics rules that the Supreme Court has subjected themselves to. There are still federal disclosure requirements that require you to list lavish presents and gifts given to you. So what did Alito do? We know the facts. The facts are he flew on a private jet round trip owned by Paul Singerman. Would have cost him $200,000 round trip if he had chartered that plane himself to the remote parts of Alaska. I've been to Alaska. I went on a cruise ship with like 4,000 other people. I didn't get a round trip seat on Paul Singer's private G5 or whatever he's flying these days. To get there. And then he spent a week or two fishing. And at night, private chefs cooked up, and I'm not making this up, this is from emails and receipts that have been seen by ProPublica, Kobe beef, crab legs, $1,000 bottles of wine. Right. Exactly what you would picture in your mind when a Supreme Court justice like Alito has a fishing trip with somebody like Paul Singer who's trying to curry favor. And it's not like Paul Singer doesn't regularly have business in front of the Supreme Court. And I will tell you here, in case you're scratching your head, not one time did Sam Alito recuse or disqualify himself from hearing a matter that involved one of Paul Singer's companies. Look, when a company like Elliott Management, a hedge fund, Berkshire Hathaway, owned by Warren Buffett, they own dozens and dozens, hundreds and hundreds of companies, but they have to list all of their companies and affiliates on disclosure forms at the Supreme Court so that Supreme Court justices can see if they have a conflict. So for Alito to come out in the Wall Street Journal today and say, had no idea that Elliott Management had a huge stake against the country of Argentina. When I ruled 7-1, or I think it was 7-2, in favor of Paul Singer's company against Argentina, and he realized in that alone $2.4 billion. Yes, you heard it right. The guy that Sam Alito went and hobnobbed with, $1,000 bottles of wine, $200,000 private planes, round trip ticket equivalent. He ruled in his favor 7-1 when Elliott's hedge fund sued the country of Argentina, I would imagine under distressed debt, because Argentina's inflation rate and its economy is always in ruins. And hedge funds like Elliott come in to try to take advantage of that and play arbitrage, buying low, selling high, pumping and dumping where they can. In that case, Elliott Management made $2.4 billion. You don't think it was in the back of Paul Singer's mind when he introduced Sam Alito, who was getting an award, when he sat next to him, when he talked to him, when he fished with him in Alaska, that maybe one day this will pay major dividends for me? And it did. Of course it did. We know that this is a big problem for Sam Alito because he has a tell, like a poker tell. The tell is that he didn't respond to ProPublica. Instead, he dashed off, or had one of his clerks type up a op-ed piece that he had published in the Wall Street Journal before the ProPublica piece came out. That's a little odd, right? Well, not when you consider that the Wall Street Journal is owned by Rupert Murdoch. So you got a Rupert Murdoch publication publishing a right-wing Supreme Court justice's tirade. And that's all I can call it. I mean, we'll put part of it up on the board. You can go read it for yourself. I mean, he's angry. It's a tirade. He doesn't try to apologize for anything. He tries to explain everything. But by explaining it, I think he actually makes it worse in this irate attack on ProPublica. What his main attack is he says, one, ignorance. I didn't know that Elliott Management owned a company that was before the Supreme Court. Well, that's inconsistent with the disclosure requirements of the entities, corporate entities that are before the court. And ignorance is no excuse under the law. You learn that about the second day in law school. Second thing he says is, well, I was just filling a seat on a plane, a private plane. That seat would have went empty. Okay, well, go put somebody who's below the poverty line on that plane. They would have enjoyed that. I don't think it's an excuse to say, I was just a warm body. I was just a crash test dummy sitting in a seat. That was his second defense in his article. The third is, we didn't talk shop. I barely remember talking to Paul Singer. If you just Google Paul Singer and Sam Alito, you'll come up with dozens and dozens of photos of them together in different places. All right. Let alone, listen, I've been away with the guys on like hunting or fishing trips. You talk a lot. Okay. I mean, yes, you're communing with nature and you're fishing or whatever you're doing, but you talk a lot. And so for him to say, I really don't remember this Paul Singer of which you're talking about. Come on. No, nobody buys that. You're making it worse, trying to deny it. And then finally, he said, well, it wasn't, he won't use the word lodge, right? Because lodge suggests big fat cats, in a hunting or fishing lodge. So he called it a facility. He said it was a rustic but comfortable facility. A rustic but comfortable facility. In 2008, this lodge was a high-end lodge that catered to big shots, mainly Republicans, spending a lot of cash. That's what it was. Now, in a bit of sleight of hand, Alito posted a website for the lodge. Except, in the last 15 years, time has not been kind to this lodge, and it's gone downhill a couple of notches. It's like a hotel, though. Once was a 5-star and is now a Best Western. So rather than saying what people at the time, let's put it this way. I'll make it easy. Paul Singer and his G5 flying to Alaska on $1,000 bottles of wine is not staying at a Red Roof Inn. It was a very nice lodge. Say the word, Sam. Lodge that you stayed in. Just admit it. It's better if you admit it and say, I didn't have an ethical obligation to report it, which you did because it was transportation and lodging, than for you to downplay the facility and that you stayed in, or your interaction of Paul Singer, or you're rubbing elbows with him, or you're talking shop, because nobody really believes that. All you're doing is bringing, again, heaping more disrespect on the institution of the Supreme Court. I mean, they're already well below used car dealers. You know, they're well below that in the public ranking. The Supreme Court couldn't get worse. And again, rather than do the right thing and adopt a judicial standard of ethics, code of ethics for Supreme Court justices that match the ones that all other judges below them have to comply with, or just say you're going to comply. You're going to voluntarily comply with the judicial code of ethics that applies to every other judge in the world and in America at state and federal levels. Every state has a judicial canon of conduct for judges, and the federal government does. Federal judges do. Just say you're going to apply, you have it applied to you, rather than run around and spend so much energy doing the wrong thing. All the energy, Sam Alito, Clarence Thomas, Chief Justice Roberts, Gorsuch, and the rest, that you're spending giving speeches paid for by foreign donors or right-wing donors in America flying you overseas, writing Wall Street Journal articles and editorials, refusing to attend Senate Judiciary Committee investigation hearings. Just do the right thing. Come clean. Amend all of your prior disclosures. Adopt the judicial canons that apply to you. And just, now that you've fixed from a remedial standpoint your past bad acts, don't do anything else bad. How about that? How about one? You only need one commandment, right? Don't do anything else bad that undermines the credibility and the institution of one of the three co-equal branches of government. The Supreme Court is important to our judicial system, to our constitutional republic. It's played a role since Marbury versus Madison was decided in the 1780s. We need a healthy institution as a counterweight to the executive branch and to the legislative branch, but we don't have it right now because it's occupied by craven, weak, inferior people who don't deserve lifetime appointment to have one of 9 top jobs in the country in that branch of government. We got one president, right? We got 537 elected officials in the legislature, and we got 9 people in the other branch of government. It should be an honor to serve there. We shouldn't have to say, oh, isn't that interesting that Sam Alito jumped out in front to publish preemptively a Wall Street Journal article today to try to fight off the ProPublica investigative reporting. I shouldn't have to do this hot take, but I'm going to. Only on the MeidasTouch network. I do them like this about every day at the intersection of law and politics to bring this news to you. We then take the best of these stories, we curate them, and we do a full-length podcast also on the MeidasTouch network called Legal AF on Wednesdays and Saturdays. You can follow me on all things social media at MS Popok. And if you like this kind of hot take, you can give me a thumbs up. You can comment. It helps the algorithm, helps the quantity and quality of what we do on this network. This is Michael Popok, Legal AF reporting.
Hey, Meidas Mighty. Love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram at MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.